call the Business and Governance Committee meeting of the SD Surge Board to order. We are only 5 minutes late, which I blame entirely on Val. Sorry. Are there any non-agenda public comments?
No public comment.
Okay, well, I actually just want to come up with one issue. A little bird told me that there is somebody in the room who is celebrating an anniversary of their 21st birthday that happened, I guess, this past week, and I think that was Joe. So, Joe, am I correct that you have recently suffered a birthday? Then I think we should congratulate you. Happy birthday, Joe. All right, so let's move on to I guess it's item number 3, action requested items. The first item is presentation of the SD Surge fiscal year 2019 budget. I guess the question that I would like to ask is first of all, is there anybody, either trustees or staff, that wants to has any questions or has anything to add to their report? It looks like, Ted, you have something to add to your report because you've come up here, or do you?
Does Ted get a vote?
Ted does.
I'm only here to answer your question.
Okay. So, is there anybody on the committee that has any questions or has any issues? You've read the material, I take it.
I'd like to make one comment.
Please.
I think the budget is very straightforward. I compliment you and your staff on getting it together so well and so efficiently. It's labor and litigation, right?
Yes.
That's the budget.
That's pretty much.
Yeah.
I
There's there's far more detail in it than that, so I'm oversimplifying it. But those are the major items, and so thank you very much, and
like to
please
thank
thank you
Greg's-
to your staff.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Greg.
Are there any other questions or comments by trustees?
Just to call out we have a $520,000 increase in the litigation budget.
Correct.
What's the increase in the labor budget?
Approximately 3.1%.
234,000
Correct.
increase. And can you just briefly explain for the record the reason for those two increases?
The primary reason for the salaries and fringe increase in total is related to the city's pay increase at 3.3%, as well as step increases and promotions within SD Surge. With respect to the legal side, obviously the litigation costs were significantly higher in relation to what we had originally budgeted because we had expected a different outcome. At this time, the FY18 projected budget is up by that $520,000, and we're keeping it at the same level for FY19, pending the litigation flowing into that fiscal year.
Great. And that assessment is based on interviews with Johnny Tran?
Absolutely.
And assessments of individual, it goes granularly down to individual cases.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. So for the committee members, items number 2 through 4 are basically, we're undertaken as part of a 3-year review of our procedures. And so these are our staff's recommendations to change either the procedures or the policies to basically conform with what we are doing or to make changes that are appropriate in that regard. So let's, starting with number 2, is there any trustee who, what's that?
Do you want to vote on each item?
Do you want to vote on each item individually?
It's normally how we do it.
Okay, that's fine.
You tell
We
me.
can, then why don't we start with go ahead and go back to the vote on item number 1, Cynthia. So motion to accept the 2019 fiscal year budget.
Ready to vote?
All right.
All votes are in.
All right, and that motion passes 5-0. Okay, item number 2, staff's recommendation to change for changes to the audit committee charter and the board administration charter. Are there any trustees, after having reviewed the material, that have any questions or comments about the revisions? Seeing nobody in the queue, do you have anything to add to your report, Susan?
I do. I wanted to bring to the trustees' attention that I reviewed the audit committee charter with the audit committee yesterday, and they had further revisions to subsection 8D2. And Cynthia, if I could bring that up.
Is there,
Is this?
oh, she's doing another thing. Oh.
So I wanted to point out that they amended the language to leave in from discussions, so it now reads, obtain reasonable assurances from discussions with the internal auditor, external auditor, consultants, and/or management that SDSER's accounting systems are reliable and the internal controls are operating effectively.
In the procedure, there's no problem with this committee voting on that change? Okay. Then I guess the question at this point would be a motion to accept these changes as amended by the audit committee yesterday. By the way, why does the audit committee drag their feet like that? I mean, why did it take them so long to come back with comments? No, I'm sorry, it's fine. Okay. Cynthia?
I wouldn't want to do anything to prejudice, his chances in any future employment, but I understand the internal auditor's basically been asleep at the wheel for the last 60 days or so.
Well, that's what I've been told. Well, there really hasn't been anybody in charge, right? So until Greg got in.
So we need a mover in a second. Ready to vote? All votes are in.
All right, and that motion passes 5-0. Item number 3, staff's recommendation with changes to the board's meeting policy and a few other sundry of items. I'd like to just point out, because I've come under incredible attack for my expeditious running of these meetings, and I would just like to point people to the board member responsibility policy number 3, preparation, which I thank you for doing this review every 3 years, because it allowed me, without having to go back and do the work myself, to find out this section that requires us as trustees to come to the board meeting having read all meeting materials and having asked any questions of staff necessary to complete our understanding of the material. So I just would like to say that I'm pleased to see that that's in there. All right.
See, there is a maxim of jurisprudence: superfluity does not vitiate.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Put me between like two lawyers.
Do the trustees have any questions about these changes? Any comments? Susan, do you have any comments to this item?
No, I'm just happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. All right, then can we put up the voting buttons?
Ready to vote? All votes are in.
Okay. All right, and that motion passes 5-0. Item number 4, staff's review of the board rules. Well, there's a whole series of board rules that were reviewed. Are there any trustees that have any questions?
Yes.
All right.
On 4.6. Get to it. I'm trying to bring it up. The portion where it says the portion where it says the beneficiary has 60 days on that. I think if someone's grieving from a loss of a loved one, that 60 days might be a short term. So I would say that probably consider extending that if there's nothing that prevents us from extending it, say, another 30 days.
Where are you referring to? Sorry, Rule
The terminate,
4.60?
yeah,
4.60, okay.
yeah. I had it written.
It's 4.60A.
Yeah. And then,
I mean, my experience is that people don't really grieve that much when they lose a loved one, unless there's no insurance policy. So I don't know that this is. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
Susan, can you explain real quickly what an installment contract is and what the 60 days is referring to? Because I'm not sure it was referring to someone dying at the time, but
It's the installment contract is when someone purchases service credit and they can't pay for it in a lump sum, so we put them on a payment plan. And they have a requirement to pay this within a certain amount of time. I think specifically the portion that Mr. Sullivan's speaking about is where it states in Board Rule 4.60 that staff recommends members have 60 days following the retirement date and that the member's beneficiary has 60 days from notification by SD SERS to choose how to resolve the termination of the installment contract.
Correct.
You're probably talking about C, actually, which is the death of a member.
Right. And then it falls upon the beneficiary, surviving spouse, et cetera,
Yeah,
to
that's
make a
C.
decision within 60 days. And I was thinking that it should be 90 days.
It's 60 days from the notification from SD SERS, so it's not necessarily from the death of the member, but it's the letter that's sent from SD SERS that you have to make up your mind as to what you're going to do and how you're going to pay for this, or what you're going to choose.
And what's the practice on, I mean, what is it, what would that time frame be on average? What do we do?
I would defer to Marcelle, because she's familiar with this.
Hi, a couple things on this. One is we're talking about two separate instances. So if we're talking about a death that's going to result in a beneficiary being paid a retirement allowance, they're going to need to make that decision more quickly than 60 days because what they do with that contract will be part of determining a benefit. If it is for beneficiaries that are not going to be receiving ongoing benefit, it's 60 days from when we notify them of this issue. Generally, you're talking about somewhere between 10 to 30 days before we notice them. We have to, first of all, be notified that the member has passed away. And then we generally are asking for copies of death certificates before we're asking them to make any decisions on what's going on. So it is probably closer to 3, 4, 5 months before they would be hitting up against that date that they have to make a decision. But we felt like we needed to put something in here that told us when they needed to do that and not leave it completely open as it was before. But we're very sensitive that we're not calling someone the day after they've lost a spouse or their father and saying, hey, we need to know in 60 days, what do you want to do with this? It generally requires some time to determine what the benefits available are, find the beneficiaries, notify them, and move down that path.
And in the event that someone doesn't respond within that time, then there's a mandatory requirement to elect option 2.
Correct.
Is that, in 99% of the cases, the better option anyway, or is there really a potential for somebody to lose money by not making this election within 60 days?
If they are going to be receiving a refund of contributions anyway, because that's the only option for death, then it doesn't matter whether they select A or B, because they're still getting the money back. The difference would be if they're going to receive a benefit, and if they're going to receive an ongoing benefit, then 2 is the better option. You would want to have that in there.
So it seems like if they were to fail to meet this deadline, there's very little likelihood that they would suffer any penalty or adverse consequence.
Correct. And then remember, too, that we do have the appeals policy, so they have the decision to appeal any actions taken by staff. So if in the rare instance where they default to option 2, that is not the best option for them, they can appeal that decision, and I think that they would be successful in that appeal. It is a board rule, so the board can change it if they choose to.
So in light of that, I'm comfortable with it.
I think I'm
Okay.
I'm getting
No,
there,
I-
and mainly because of the timelines. I was just thinking if it was hard and fast at 60 days, I just didn't know what and then with the by the time of the notification, I think that if it's extended out, then I think it's a decent timeline.
It is, and for those of you that have worked with Lori Huesland that handles our death, our members who have passed away, she is very empathetic and very good with beneficiaries, and she's not going to be hard line.
Marcel,
Today's
what-
59 days, make a decision, so.
What if this clause 3 said that if an election is not made, then SD SERS shall implement the option that generates the greatest net present cash value to the beneficiary or something like that? Would that be too hard to try and figure out and do?
It could be difficult to quantify depending on what the circumstances are, because this just talks about death of a member.
Yeah.
There's lots of different, is the member eligible to retire? Are they not eligible to retire? Was it a safety officer and it's a death in the line of duty and they follow the rules to have their beneficiary receive an ongoing benefit? It would be challenging.
Okay. Thank you.
Joe, I think you're in the queue. Okay.
He's got comments.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, my request to speak was as much for education as it was to make a statement. And I think with the discussion of the board, I think that has covered it because I was concerned with the death of a member and the difficulties of the beneficiary dealing with that in a condensed period of time. But I think that what the discussion here has covered that, I think is good. So I have no further statement, but appreciate the consideration for those members. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Is there anybody else in the queue? I mean, there's nobody else in the queue. Is there? Oh, Cynthia.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Marcel and what I thought Joe was going to say, is to point out that the retiree associations also provide a support network for retirees in the case of death situations. They are actively involved with that. I have never seen a situation here where we've had someone who's in the situation where the person has died and we can't get an answer and we just implement it like that. We just don't operate that way. There are approximately 30 people a month who die, and I think it's one of the things we do best is take care of these people. And so if there was something where we had a decision that needed to be made, Lori on our staff, the other folks on the team, Sandra, myself, we would be reaching out to that person as well as working with the retiree groups. They have a support group called Hand in Hand that actually specifically addresses those issues. We'd be working with them. They have representatives that actually go over to the widower's house, assist them with the paperwork. And so it really is a strong safety net to help folks through this. Obviously, with the board rule, we want to have something in place so that we can help the person to get their benefit. That's the purpose of this. So I just want to make sure that this conversation ends with the thought that we very much want to take care of folks, and in no way would we be making a rule to make it be onerous on someone or make it hard for them. We are here to support folks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions by trustees? Nope. Any other comments that you think need to be covered, Susan? All right. Then can we vote on the issue?
Ready to vote? All votes are in.
Okay, and that vote passes 5-0. Okay, moving to new business, to the semi-annual travel and training report. So this is the report that covers, this is a semi-annual report that goes to the trustees that's just covering what money was spent, in this case from July of 2017 to December 31st of 2017. It looks like there was about $67,000 spent on travel for trustees and staff for education purposes. So, all right, anybody have any questions? All right, no action is required, so let's move on to item number C, status reports. As you know, this is where I think we shine because we tend to move very briskly through these. So I guess I will take them as a group. Is there anybody that wants to talk about anybody who wants to talk about any of these particular issues or reports? I know you've read them because you all read the board rule and you came prepared. Does anybody have any questions from the trustees' perspective?
I'm concerned that our staff is going to forget how to deliver reports if we keep this up.
I think they deliver beautiful reports. Does staff have anything that they want to add to any of their issues? And I will actually, just on IT, I got to tell you, the two big problems apparently are Iris and emails. If we get rid of those two programs, you guys are going to have no problems and nothing to work on. So I think we should start there, just as a general issue. But other than that, and then I will also say, Cynthia, I understand that you technically missed your target in December of 2017 by having an average call wait of 21 seconds instead of 20 seconds. And I understand that you sort of look at that as a broken streak. I call that a rounding error. And so I don't think that that's the case, but I think the biggest problem that you had was, and it's very simple, apparently when we communicate with our customers, they call us. So if we stop communicating with them, we will shave seconds off of her call time. So I gotta be honest, I think that's probably what we should be looking at. Anyway, does staff have any other comments about their reports? Anything that they want to add that's not in their report? All right, hearing none, then we will move to questions and comments from the chair, the trustees, and staff. Is there anybody who has any questions?
I'd like to make one comment.
Sure.
A couple of days ago, the audit committee was advised that Lee Paravano has given his resignation. He'll be moving over to the airport authority, and we're very sorry to see him go. These are going to be big shoes to be filled.
That's assuming we let him go.
That's right. That's right. You're right. I don't know that it's been accepted, right?
It's not been accepted.
But the audit committee has put in place a process. It's the same process that was used 4.5 years ago when Lee was hired. And we'll be moving forward with that process.
Thank you very much, Bobby. Any other comments or questions? Greg, I just want to tell you, congratulations on your first set of committee meetings, and I'm glad you're here, and thank you. Other than that, any non-docketed items? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Thank you.